and I'm going to complete day 10 of Wesboss's JavaScript 30. Today's activity is really useful, or something that you might see particularly in an email, where if you want to check multiple checkboxes by holding the Shift key, well, I'll show you the JavaScript that you need to write in order to make that happen. So, for instance, you have this checklist that you're used to checking one by one, but let's say you wanted to grab from this element all the way down here. Well, with how I have the JavaScript lined up, you can press this. I'm holding now the Shift key, and all of the elements in between are going to be checked off. And if I wanted to do this in reverse, again, now I'm holding the Shift key, all the elements are checked off. Let's get working on the JavaScript. First thing I want to do is grab my DOM elements, which will be all of the inputs. This last checked, you'll see later when I write the function, is going to be something of a goalpost. And in between this goalpost and another one that's going to be triggered by the event, I'm going to evaluate a Boolean expression to true. And when that Boolean expression is true, I'm going to change the value of the input to checked. And that's what's going to check off all of the boxes, so to speak, on the DOM screen, or on the DOM, or on the browser. So we have this variable here that'll act as a goalpost. Then I'm going to add an event listener to each one of those inputs, and that event listener is going to trigger check all boxes. So the first thing I'm going to do in this function is change the value of last checked to this. So no matter what happens, last checked is going to be whatever element triggered the event. So now I'm going to declare a variable called inBetween. This is the Boolean expression I'm going to use to check whether or not we are in between these goalposts that I'm going to set up in just a second. So right now I'm just going to set it to false. And now we need to set up a few conditionals here. The first one is if the Shift key is being held, so that is event.shift key, and if the item is being checked. So if you unchecked something, this isn't going to work. But if you are checking something and if you're pressing the Shift key, then we can move on to the next part of the function. And I'm going to loop over all the checkboxes using for each checkbox. And in here I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm going to set up my endpoints first. What are those endpoints going to be? Well, it's either going to be this very element that you just checked. So that looks like this. So if checkbox is either the element you just pressed, or if checkbox is the last checked item, then we're going to toggle my Boolean expression. So we'll say whatever in between is, go ahead and change it. Okay, so let's pause here to see what's going on. So you've either just checked a box, or sorry, we're setting up our endpoints here. It's either going to be the box you just checked or the checkbox that you checked previously. In either case, we're going to switch the Boolean expression here. That way, anything that exists outside of these two endpoints is going to evaluate to false, and anything that is inside those two checkpoints is going to evaluate to true. Now that's a little bit wordy, so I'm going to put a couple of console.logs in here to make this look a little bit clearer. And first I'm just going to console.log the checkbox, and then in here, when the variable, or when the Boolean evaluates to true, I'm going to console.log, let's say we are in between. Let's save that. We'll restart this, and I have the DevTools open. So I'm going to press this, and then I'm going to hold the Shift key and check this box. And if you notice the inputs, here is when we've switched the Boolean expression to true. So you've got this first input, nothing. The second input is the very first thing that I triggered, And then everything in between is going to evaluate till true until we get to that checkbox, which is what I pressed when I had the shift key pressed. And now the Boolean expression is going to go back to false, so the following elements are not going to evaluate to true. And just to show that this works if you go from the bottom up, I'm going to press good luck. I'm going to hold the shift key to check one item. And again, we've got this item here, or here we go. This item here is checked. Now we have the goalpost set up. This item here is checked. Now we have the goalpost set up, and everything in between is going to evaluate to true. Okay, great. So now it's evaluating to true. But what do we actually want to do? Well, if in between, well, we're going to tell the input that they've been checked. And this is how we do that. We take the checkbox, the input, and we marked it as checked equals true. So this ought to get us where we want it to go. Let's refresh. I'm going to press check one item. I'm holding the shift key, and then there we go. And just to show that it works going in the other direction, good luck. Now I'm holding the shift key, and there we go. So I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. I'll see you tomorrow.